In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields.
Hi, it's Debbie and Stain, and today we're going to explore some very important history here in this part of Belgium regarding the Great War. And we thought it would be interesting to explore these memorials and grave sites with Veterans Day coming up, and pay our respects and learn a little bit more about the Great War between 1914 and 1918.
Right.
This area of Belgium was really well hit and is known as the bloodiest battlefield of the Great War. So today we're starting in the Tynecot Cemetery.
Follow along with us as we discover some more about what happened here during World War I and pay our respects to those that fought for our freedoms and paid the ultimate price.
Tynecot is the largest Commonwealth war cemetery in the world for any war. Established in October 1917 after the Battle of Passchendaele, it houses just shy of 12,000 graves, of which 8,369 are unnamed. The memorial in this cemetery bears the names of nearly 35,000 men who fell in the Ypres salient and whose graves are unknown.
So I find it really heart-wrenching. This gentleman here, Felton, H.R. Felton, who was in the Worcestershire Regiment, second lieutenant. Down here, someone has left a picture of him, as you can see, when he died, and this is him. So we're driving down the road to another memorial for this Great War, and I look out the window and I said to Stain, I said, there's this little cemetery right here in front of this farm. What's the deal on that? And he told me this really cool story, so I think he needs to share it.
As I was growing up, you would hear stories in the news about war remnants being found. They could be, artifacts, but most often, they would be shells. They would be unexploded shells. So farmers deal with the aftermath of the war on a regular basis, definitely in this area. And this is an example where I'm sure the farmer, this one or whoever lived here before, ran into, remnants from the war in the form of, human remains. And then they commemorate that with putting a little cemetery in here that is honoring those folks that they found.
Interesting how you see these dotted all over the landscapes here in the West Flanders area of Belgium, which is, I'm beginning to believe this saying now. It's hitting, and that's, this was the bloodiest war zone, battle area of World War I, right here in this area of Belgium.
Well, we just made it to the Yorkshire Dugout and trenches. This is a 1915 trench that was discovered in the early 90s and was in surprisingly good condition. This is an industrial park currently, so as they were building out more sites and developing more, they were running into a lot of war history. And there's this group called the Diggers who have taken upon themselves that whenever that happens, they will go in and do the research on what they're finding, make sure nothing gets lost. As part of this discovery here, they found 155 soldiers and went through the effort of trying to determine who they were. It's not clear based on the signage on the site if they were able to identify anybody, but what they were able to do was really maintain the authenticity and a lot of these trenches. I'll show you some more video, but it's really amazing, right in smack dab in the middle of an industrial park, that this site is here. So I'm kneeling here. I'm sat next to the trenches. I would say they're about 8 feet deep or so. You can see it's going further back. Debbie's in the back there taking some pictures. But this was part of the Allied forces, the front line, of course. And it is said that for parts of this line right here, it was only about 100 yards removed from the German front lines. So this was really where a lot of heavy fighting was happening. The research that they did on the remains that they found and the historical significance of this area indicate that most of the casualties here that they discovered in 1992 were from a July 6th, 1915 battle that happened in this area. So really still kind of early on in the war, knowing that it was from 1914 through 18. But yeah, very kind of sobering, you know, if it wasn't for the Allied forces and everybody in the world really coming together against the German military and its leadership trying to conquer basically the entire world, what would have happened? We need to be thankful for those that came here and stood up for freedom and stood up for the Western world.
The next cemetery we're at now is called Sanctuary Wood Cemetery, and what I find very interesting about this cemetery was there were originally 3 smaller cemeteries in this area.
The soldiers would set up small cemeteries where battles resulted in casualties, and so they started 3 smaller cemeteries on this hill. This is called Hill 62, and those 3 cemeteries were all destroyed throughout the war from continuous fighting and bombing by the German forces. And so ultimately this was the main cemetery that was sort of rediscovered after the war. They found between 150 and 200 graves here, and then started treating that as sort of a central point where they either reburied previously buried soldiers from other places in the area.
Oh, and as far away as the coast of Belgium at
Right.
Newport.
Yeah, all the way from Newport, and those of you may know, but Newport was kind of where the line was. So this was really a very critical point in the Western Front, this whole area. There's a map over there that kind of shows the way the line and the front shifted back and forth based on various offensives, either by the Allies or the Germans. And this changed hands multiple times. Mm-hmm. So it was very much a critical point. And another thing that's very interesting is that all these big battles were mostly on the hills surrounding the city of Ypres. So Ypres was
right
sort of
there,
a fortified city, yep. And it was very critical for the Germans or the Allies to have visibility as to what was happening in Ypres. So being in an elevated spot like this was very valuable. So that's why it was so critical. Now, the name Sanctuary Wood, we also just learned about where that came from. So British soldiers early on in the First World War used the forest, the wooded area up here, to shield themselves from some of the shelling that was happening. So then that's why they came up with sanctuary wood as a name for the area, and ultimately it's also the name that they kept for this particular cemetery.
And here to our left is some trees that obviously are remnants of the forest. A lot of this has been, thinned out, let's say. But just up the road from here is the Sanctuary Wood Museum. And in there, it's not open now in these times, they have trenches in there.
Right.
Like the ones we saw earlier today.
I saw some pictures. They look somewhat different, but it's the same principle, you know, where they really turned it into a place where they could barricade themselves and stay protected from the shelling.
But evident that a lot of happenings were in this area during the Great War.
So ultimately, there's about 2,000, just under 2,000 graves here. Only 600 of the 636, I believe, of the soldiers, allies that are buried here were able to be identified. So again, many of the graves here have no name on them.
It's very, very sombering. So we're here at the Kemmelberg now, and this is another pivotal part of the war area. And I think the reason for that, correct me if I'm wrong, is because this is actually up on what Belgium would call a mountain.
No, I mean, we don't pretend it's a mountain. It's a hill. It's an elevated spot in the area, like others that we've talked about before.
Okay.
There were several battles here, and behind us here, you see the rooster, which is a symbol for France, right? And this is a French memorial site where they're basically thanking the French army for fighting on behalf of the Allies in World War I. There's about 5,000 French people that are being commemorated here at this particular site, some of which died in this area and some in France. We just were at the top of this hill, and there used to be, it's called the Belvedere, and Belvedere is like a viewpoint. Beautiful view is what that means in French. And I was reading some of the history there as well about the war, and the Belvedere existed before World War I, when it was destroyed by the constant battle. But it was rebuilt between World War I and World War II. And interestingly, they had some pictures in World War II. Hitler actually stopped by this hill to visit the Belvedere that had been rebuilt up there. And from there, he could see the town of Tynecot, which is where he served as a regular soldier in World War I. Wow. So I didn't realize that. But the Belvedere was a watchtower, basically, that was built primarily for tourism, but then during the war was used for other purposes. And it was, as a tourist destination or stop, it was known for the view, as well as the fact that it had a bear. And on the ground floor, there was a cage and there was a bear in there. So kind of interesting to learn that today.
Yeah. So, okay, well that's cool. So we're going to go up and look at that other monument up there? Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's another monument about a couple hundred yards up here. So we made it to the big monument, but it turns out this is actually also for the French soldiers that died.
So we're taking a little break up here on the Kemmelberg for a traditional Belgian waffle. We decided to end our day here in Ieper, and you heard us speak a lot about Ieper throughout our tour today, and the importance and significance that Ieper had in this World War I here in this Belgium area. So we did that on purpose, because every night here in Ieper they do the last post under the Menin Gate. They have done that every night since 1928 and have never missed a night, and they're not going to miss tonight. However, we have to watch it from outside the Menin Gate, because normally you can go inside and the gentlemen that play the last post are on the other entry point of the gate.
Right.
But with COVID and everything, we have to stand out here and listen from afar, but at least we get to do it. So we want to thank you for joining us today as we toured around the area of Flanders Fields here in Belgium. Yep. And pay our respects to all you veterans. Our heart goes out to all veterans and families, and we just want to thank you from the bottom of our heart for all that you do for us as citizens of this world. We really appreciate you. Thank you for joining us, and now we'll let you hear the last post. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hij staat vol dicht. Buiten houden. Buiten houden.
Want ik heb het zelfs tegen.